Breaking tonight, President Obama coming under fire for his reaction to the gruesome attack on a synagogue in Jerusalem today. An attack that left 3 Americans and 2 others dead. At least 7 more were injured while they were praying in a synagogue. In his remarks afterward, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, quote, "I call on all the leaders of the countries in the Western world. I want to see outrage over this massacre." Here again is some of what President Obama said today.
We condemn in the strongest terms these attacks. Secretary Kerry has spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu. President Abbas has strongly condemned the attacks. Too many Israelis have died, too many Palestinians have died. And at this difficult time, I think it's important for both Palestinians and Israelis to try to work together to lower tensions and to reject violence. The majority of Palestinians and Israelis overwhelmingly want peace. The United States wants to work with all parties involved to make that a reality.
Joining me now, Mark Thiessen. He's an American Enterprise Institute fellow and a former presidential speechwriter. Mark, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Was that outrage?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, it's sad that Prime Minister Netanyahu actually has to ask the world for outrage. I mean, it should be automatic that there's outrage in the world. So the fact that he even has to go out and say, I want condemnations, I want outrage, just shows how off the world is when it comes to these kinds of things. But second of all, look, 3 of the people who were killed were American citizens. So this was not just a terrorist attack against Israel. This was a terrorist attack against the United States. This is no different than the ISIS beheading of an American citizen earlier this week. In both cases, Islamic radicals took knives and butchered American citizens. It doesn't matter whether it happened in Israel or whether it happened in Iraq. And can you imagine if after the ISIS beheadings, a world leader had come out and said, we need calm on both sides, we need to lower tensions, we need to restrain violence? I mean, this was a terrorist attack. We don't need moral equivalence. We need condemnation from the President of the United States.
That's what it is moral equivalence between these 2 groups. And we've seen in recent weeks several attacks on the Israelis. I mean, and Americans, actually, who are in Israel, including a 3-month-old baby who was run down by a car. I mean, I could go through, there's at least 7 incidents off the top of my head over the past couple of months where they have been getting attacked and attacked and attacked and attacked and attacked. And there was one incident where there was a bus driver who committed suicide, and some of the Palestinians said, well, the Israelis did that. But Israel came forward and said, we had a Palestinian representative present, we had an Israeli representative present, and they both agreed that it was a suicide, it wasn't a murder. I mean, that's all they've been pointing to on the other side. The question is whether our president needs to be much more clear and forceful about what we're going to do about the assassination of Americans in Israel.
No, that's exactly right. And look, again, this was a terrorist attack against the United States, the same as the ISIS attack. So what are the consequences going to be? I mean, the Palestinian Authority is inciting this violence, and not just Hamas. It's President Abbas who is inciting this violence.
So just for the viewers who don't follow Israel as closely as you do, it's basically you've got the Palestinian Authority, and the president sort of says, well, that's one group, and they're dealing with Israel. And then Hamas is a splinter group that the State Department recognizes as a terrorist group. But we can talk to the Palestinians. It's Hamas is the problem, but the Palestinians have been the problem lately.
Yeah, so there's the good Palestinians and the bad Palestinians. Hamas is supposed to be the bad Palestinians. Abbas and Fatah are supposed to be the good Palestinians, except the good Palestinians have been inciting this violence. President Abbas, when there was one of those attacks you just mentioned, he called the person a martyr who's going to go to heaven. He called on people to prevent. He publicly called in a speech just 11 days ago. He called on November 11th. He called in a speech for Palestinians to rise up and prevent the contamination of the holy sites by Jews, and asked them to stand and defend the holy sites. So that's what they did. These people responded to President Abbas, the good Palestinian leader, who's called on them to use violence to defend the holy sites.
So he comes out today and says, well, I condemn what I saw in this synagogue this morning. And then he goes on, I mean, President Obama didn't mention it, but he goes on to say, but all these other things. And nobody references what he said as recently as a couple of days ago, and we're supposed to believe that he is an equal partner to Netanyahu in the peace process.
The Fatah website, Fatah is his party, which is supposed to be, again, the good Palestinian party, they actually called it a blessed operation on their Facebook page today. And, the other thing that President Obama said, which is flatly untrue, is that the majority of Palestinians want peace. That's just flat untrue. First of all, look at the pictures you've been showing on your program tonight. But there was a Pew poll.
It's stunning. Those pictures are stunning. They're celebrating in the streets like it's, you know, the 4th of July. They're thrilled over these blood-stained hallways of a place of worship. Cupcakes, candy. Look at them. Go ahead. Sorry, make your point.
No, it's okay. There was a Pew poll this summer that asked for about throughout the Middle East, how do you support violence against civilians? And in the Palestinian territories, 46% of Palestinians support terrorist attacks against civilian targets. In Gaza, it's 62%. So no, it is flatly not true that the majority of Palestinians want peace. In Gaza, at least, a supermajority want terrorism. And so how do you make peace with people like this when you have leaders like President Abbas who are inciting this violence, actively inciting this violence, and then when something happens, they condemn it in the softest terms, but in the next sentence say we need to defend the holy sites.
And we accept it. We accept that we condemn it as real without being open about what he said a week ago, what he said the week before that, what he said right after he said we condemn it. It's like we're not dealing in reality here with the American people about what he stands for and what he wants. Mark, good to see you.
Good to see you, Megan.
Up next, the stunning story behind what feds call a would-be terrorist living in Virginia and what she was trying to do to help the Islamic State terror group. Plus, new reporting on how groups like CAIR, America's largest Muslim group, may be joining in the protests over the police shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. Why? And tonight, make sure to join me for a special Facebook Q&A. I'll be taking your questions on the show page, which is facebook.com/The Kelly File. Right after the show, I'm going to log on and we're going to have a Q&A live. So I hope you'll join us. Think of a question to ask and join me then, 10 p.m.